Super Bowl week. What's up? Welcome, everybody, to Fantasy Football Today, presented by BetMGM. Make it legendary. Adam and Heath are here, dressed in hoodies. Oh, you poor guy. It must be so cold down in Florida, huh?
My wife's car had ice on the windshield when she left the house this morning. This is absurd. I'm wearing slippers to keep my feet warm in the house. It's really troublesome here in Florida, but we'll get through it. I appreciate everybody's thoughts and prayers.
Jamie will be on soon. Oh, this is horrible weather up here in New York. Just awful. And expensive, like plowing and, oil and all this stuff. Just
oil?
Yeah. I oil to heat my house, and it takes
You heat your house with oil?
Yeah, I have an oil tank, and it takes a lot of oil to heat the house when it's 5 degrees outside. So it really sucks. I hate it. But hopefully it'll be nice in San Francisco this weekend for the Super Bowl. Thursday, we'll have our big Super Bowl preview. Today, we're going to talk about our greatest hits and biggest misses from our preseason predictions for 2025. Jamie and Heath will have those. Jamie and I are going to do an FFT Express to talk about all the coaching news. So until he gets on, Heath and I will just kind of run through it real quick. We'll give you some of the analysis here, but the most of it will be on Express. And I will say, I'll save it till after the news and notes. Let's do the news and notes. The Cardinals hired Mike LaFleur, Rams offensive coordinator for the last 3 seasons and the younger brother of Green Bay's head coach. But they hired Mike LaFleur to be their new head coach. So that's Arizona getting Mike LaFleur, and the Raiders are expected to make Clint Kubiak their head coach. Kubiak is the Seahawks offensive coordinator. All right, do you like these for Arizona and Las Vegas and for fantasy?
I am pretty excited about what Kubiak could do with the Raiders. I think it'll be really interesting because we've seen him succeed with a game plan that focuses pretty heavily on the wide receiver one, and the Raiders don't have a wide receiver one. So I'm assuming that he's the brilliant offensive mind that he is. We'll have some very good stuff planned for Brock Bowers. I think they'll get the offensive line fixed, and Ashton Genty will have a much better year next year. I expect this to be a good thing for the Raiders offense and most likely for fantasy. LaFleur, I think, is one of those where probably good, which is kind of how you look at Sean Payton's offensive coordinators in terms of the NFL. They've had some success. One of them was pretty awful. And one of them was maybe mediocre. LaFleur, this isn't his first time doing this. He was the offensive coordinator for the Rams. It's his first time being a head coach.
Yeah.
But it's not but like we saw him as an offensive coordinator with the Jets also. That was obviously bad personnel. He might have bad personnel in Arizona this year. So less excited about Kubiak than I am about Kubiak, but cautiously optimistic about Arizona.
You said one of the Rams coordinators did poorly. Is that what you said?
Previous,
who is that? Waldron?
I would say so.
I don't know if he was an offensive coordinator. I was looking that up. I only saw him as a passing game coordinator. I don't know if that matters.
So Pro Football Reference says he was the offensive coordinator for Seattle for 3 years and then for Chicago for 1 year.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I'm sorry. I don't know if he was an offensive coordinator for the Rams.
Right.
Yeah. Because the previous 3 offensive coordinators for the Rams, I think, are Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, and Liam Cohen. So but there's also Shane Waldron, who was a passing game coordinator who got hired as an offensive coordinator elsewhere. But Matt LaFleur, Kevin O'Connell, and Liam Cohen have all been offensive coordinators for Sean McVay. And now you have Mike LaFleur, who just spent the last 3 seasons. So that's a very impressive group there.
Yes, very impressive. I mean, obviously Cohen for both winning and fantasy, Matt LaFleur at least for winning, and Kevin O'Connell, well, mostly really good.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think he's been pretty good, and hoping the Raiders can solve that offensive line because it's obviously a big issue. Colton Miller was hurt for much of the year. And he played 4 games. So they're going to hopefully get him back for a healthy season. They're not going to use the number 1 pick on an offensive lineman. We know that, but
we don't know who LaFleur is bringing with him to Arizona to be the offensive coordinator, right?
I haven't seen that
because somebody Andy made a good point in the chat that Rams offensive coordinators don't really call plays. Sean McVay does that. And so he may bring in somebody that just calls his own offense.
Yeah, maybe. But he does have play calling experience. You mentioned the 2 years with the Jets for Mike LaFleur. They were 27th in points per game and 28th in points per game, but they just didn't have good personnel, as you said. They did have Breece Hall, and he had that good year in 7 games. And they were 2nd and 4th in pass rate, for whatever that's worth, in the 2 seasons. So he was pass heavy. All right, we've got Drew Petzing going to call plays for the Lions. We didn't know if it'd be him or Dan Campbell. It's going to be him, at least to start. We've got Cleveland hiring an offensive coordinator. We talked about Todd Monken going to Cleveland.
Yep.
Friday's show. His coordinator will be Travis Switzer, who was the run game coordinator for Baltimore under Todd Monken. Josh Grizzard is going to be Philadelphia's new passing game coordinator. They already hired Sean Mannion as their offensive coordinator. What was it that happened on Friday? Jamie, was it Joe Brady that happened on Friday? Right after our show?
Joe Brady that happened on Friday?
No, we talked. What the heck?
That happened on Friday because it happened live on FFT Dynasty, and I had Jeff Bell from Football Guys, who is a Bills fan.
Okay.
Or was that Tuesday?
I think that was Tuesday.
It was Tuesday. So what happened? Something happened on Friday.
Did Monken happen Friday?
No, we talked.
Friday we were with Dan. No, Monken was already happened because we were giving a hard time.
Was it Declan Doyle maybe going to Baltimore as the new offensive coordinator?
Maybe.
No, whatever it was. Okay, well, not much else.
Oh no, it was the Minnesota GM was fired.
I don't think it was that necessarily. That did happen. You're right, but I felt like it was something fantasy relevant that we just missed, but maybe not. Anyway, Jamie and I are going to run through all this stuff on FFT Express. I want to spend today on the greatest hits and biggest misses of 2025. And now that Jamie's on, I will say this, and I feel bad saying it. Maybe I shouldn't say it.
Oh,
say it. Yeah. I haven't been this unexcited for a Super Bowl in a very long time. I just don't even care. I do not care. I don't know if I'm going to care on Sunday. I hope I do, but I don't I'm not feeling the Super Bowl.
I don't think that's an unpopular sentiment. I mean, you have, 2 surprise teams, even though the Super Bowl poster told you that it was going to happen. But you have the two surprise teams that are here. And, it's generally driven by star players, right? This game is generally driven by star players. And you have a lot of exciting players, but they're not stars yet. Drake Maye hasn't ascended to the Patrick Mahomes level yet. Obviously, Sam Darnold is what he is. JSN is a great receiver on the rise, but he hasn't established himself and doesn't necessarily have the national acclaim from a popularity standpoint. I think that people look at it and say, oh, wow, it's, can't wait to see him play. The running backs are, kind of just good players. There's no real superstar defensive player, unless I'm forgetting somebody. So it's just not, and the coaches, Vrabel obviously has been around a long time and he has some acclaim, but it's not an Andy Reid. It's not somebody that you've seen, in that role for several years. So I get it. It should be. I hope it's a good game. I think a lot of people look at the Patriots and say how they got here. And the teams that they faced, the coaches that they faced, the quarterbacks that they faced. They've had a very easy path. To take nothing away from them, they got here. And then Seattle just kind of is, I think just a very solid team. It's just kind of interesting.
Yeah, good question here from Soda Pop. Who on the panel is most likely to double dip at a Super Bowl party? Quite obviously not me. It definitely
including everybody who's on our show.
Regularly? Yeah, the answer sure. I mean,
Dan,
it doesn't matter. Sure. No, it's Heath for sure. Dan would never do that. Heath has already admitted that.
Dan is Jason Alexander, so yes, he would.
He learned from George's mistake. I think Heath has already admitted that he doesn't care and that he would do it.
I think that's a great memory, and I would tell everyone who was at the party that I do not care if you double dip.
But what if other people care? Would you still double dip, or would you honor?
If someone said, please don't double dip, then I would not. I'd probably just get my own bowl and put some of the dip in the bowl and then dip as often as I like.
That's exactly how you do it. But just so you know, people don't want you to double dip, even if they don't explicitly tell you that.
I believe that maybe in certain circles, but if you come to my Super Bowl party, you're a double dipper.
Is that not one of the greatest television bits of all time?
Yeah. It's incredible. You dipped the chip. You took a bite.
The guy who played the actor opposite George is amazing in that role.
Has he been in anything else?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. Like,
he's great. Heath, what's coming up on FFT Dynasty?
We've got lots of great stuff. Jax Falcone, aka Scott Bullinger, will be on tomorrow to talk about his new venture. We've got a 1 QB startup mock coming, but really, most importantly, as soon as the Super Bowl gets over, we start looking for the 2026 version of Harold Van.
Jamie, I'm sorry, I was watching the double dip clip during that. I don't recognize this guy from anything. Okay, thank you, Heath. Let's get to our greatest hits and biggest misses of 2025. All right, so you guys reviewed your sleepers, your breakouts, your busts, and I have mostly just the sleepers and breakouts that hit. And I narrowed it down because there were a lot. Good job, good season for you guys. You had a lot of hits based on those columns, but I narrowed it down to about 5 or 6 for each of you. So, Jamie, you have 2 quarterbacks on your greatest hits list. You had Trevor Lawrence and Drake Maye as sleepers. They both finished top 6 per game. Drake Maye.
I think I made a breakout.
Okay. Lawrence was QB6 per game. Maye QB3 per game. So nice work.
I went back and Maye I was relatively excited about last offseason from the beginning. Just with the addition of Josh McDaniels mostly, but Stephon Diggs and just taking a step forward. I like the way he ran as a rookie. I remember talking about that quite a bit. And for Trevor Lawrence, it was really just Liam Cohen, and the addition of Travis Hunter to a full year of Brian Thomas, which really didn't materialize. But really, it was a lot about Liam Cohen and getting a different play caller. And I liked what he did with Baker Mayfield as a rusher also, and that really materialized for Trevor Lawrence with the rushing touchdowns. So for both of those guys, it was drafting Maye to be a starter, drafting Lawrence to be a high-end backup with the chance of him, maybe becoming a starter. And I think for both of those, they worked out.
Okay, I'm going to look at Fantasy Pros ADP. Drake Maye was QB 16. Trevor Lawrence was QB 20. And Heath, I know one of your misses was Drake Maye.
Yep.
I think you made I remember the point was like you just didn't really like his weapons that much, and I think it's pretty incredible the season he had with these weapons.
Well, I think we saw Booty step up and be better than he has been. We saw Demario Douglas at times do well. Stephon Diggs when he was on the field, and it's probably just the case that Maye took the next step and elevated those guys.
Yeah, and it's funny because don't you? I've been saying, he throws the deep ball. He's had all these deep ball touchdowns. Don't you feel like his reputation, Drake Maye, right now is that he is arguably the best, or this season he was the best deep ball thrower in the NFL, or up there?
Yes, I think, listen, those types of stats, when you're talking about deep ball passing over 16 or 17 games, can be pretty wonky. So I think he might have to do it for a second year before he establishes himself as that. But he certainly was in 2025. Whether he can maintain that moving forward will be another question. The first half of the season, he looked like not just the greatest deep passer in the NFL right now, but maybe the best deep passer ever. Like his accuracy and success rate on those throws was incredible.
Yeah, what I was going to say was that Drake Maye didn't really even have that much of a standout season statistically. If you look at throws of 20 or more air yards, 30 or more air yards, it's not like he blew away the competition. So it wasn't, I guess, seems less fluky maybe. He didn't have a huge outlier season. He just made some incredible throws. All right, so Lawrence and Drake Maye were hits for Jamie. Lawrence as a sleeper, Maye as a breakout. And now it's still time for football at BetMGM. All right, you got time here. Super Bowl's coming up. When you register with BetMGM, you'll get instant access to a variety of parlay selection features, live betting options, boost tokens, and the best daily promotions in the business. And when you huddle up with BetMGM at your fingertips, every pass, every catch, and every game matter more than ever. So football is here. Don't miss out on any of the hard-hitting action. Place your money line, prop, and parlay bets with BetMGM today. Let's take a quick break and talk about 3 more guys who Jamie crushed, basically. Great calls in his preseason columns. We'll be right back on Fantasy Football Today.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
So, yeah, you had Wan'Dale Robinson as a sleeper, Jamie?
I mean, the thought was as a complimentary option to Malik Neighbors, not this. This just worked out much better than anybody who drafted Wan'Dale Robinson could have hoped. And obviously to suggest drafting him as a sleeper, he's always been good. This year was great, and I'm very curious to see where he ends up next year. If he stays with the Giants, then I think it's a good opportunity for him to, again, be that complimentary guy to Malik Neighbors. We'll see what else they do to add to this receiving core. I know you're very high on them drafting somebody, which makes a ton of sense. And as we discussed on Friday, the Isaiah Likely pairing with John Harbaugh makes a lot of sense as well, because while the tight end position there is okay, I think it could be better, and certainly Likely is a much better athlete than what they have. So it just this is just one of those, like, anytime you have an injury and a guy steps up. I had a lot of these misses at the running back position from the sleeper perspective, on, hey, draft these backups because if the guy in front of them gets hurt, they're going to be great. And they just really didn't work out to that level. But Wan'Dale from the receiver spot did.
And I have a theory, and I'm not sure if you agree with it or not, Adam. I don't really think you can have a miss on a sleeper column. If you're talking about guys that are being drafted outside of the top 100, like, if they're not good, probably 7 of the guys drafted around them weren't good either.
So I agree with that 100%. When I went through and looked at it, I'm like, I'm not going to say any misses of the sleepers.
Right.
I gave him more. The ones I emailed to him were misses of breakouts and busts. I mean, if you're just taking flyers on these guys that are late, they can't really be bad for you.
I'm not going to no. I think that's letting you off the hook. I think that's taking all the pressure.
So what do you think the success rate should be on a sleeper?
Well, I just real quick, like, we're talking about most of these players you're cutting anyway.
I mean,
or they're the potential to be cut. Like, so I'll give you an example based on ADP. I was saying Braylon Allen was going to be a breakout.
He got hurt.
Forget about how it worked out. There's no way he was being drafted by anybody else other than me as high as he was going, because the ADP suggests that.
Yeah.
So, like, that's a miss.
That was a miss. Yeah.
Yes. But based on his average draft position, not so much.
Okay, fine. So Dave had Keon Coleman, right? Keon Coleman was going as wide receiver 48. I mean, I think Dave would tell you that was a miss, but you're saying
I think you're picking on the one guy that he overhyped so much, though.
I know, but also, like, Quinshon Judkins was drafted in that range. Caleb Williams was drafted in that range. Josh Downs, okay. Drake Maye was in that range. Jayden Reed, Dalton Kincaid. They're not all misses there. I don't know. I can't really get on board with there's no such thing as a wrong sleeper call.
Well, I mean, I just, again, I'll go back to my list. If I told people to draft Ray Davis late, am I wrong on that because he didn't materialize into something, or Ollie Gordon? Like,
well, I think that personally, I feel like handcuffs have a different category than.
Somebody in the chat was trying to get us argue about what a breakout is.
Not somebody,
Johnny, and we didn't fall for it, and somehow we fell into this trap.
Oh yeah. If Thomas wants me to bring up Christian Kirk, right? Like, that was a terrible call on my part. It didn't help that he got hurt I think in the preseason, right? But no, Christian Kirk was obviously a bad call. I accept that. That was a bad sleeper call for sure. Can you be wrong on a sleeper? I think handcuffs are different than sleepers, but you should point out every preseason, like, which handcuffs actually have the potential to be great if the starter gets hurt, because Ray Davis would have been a good example of that.
I mean, the two that I named specifically were Achane had the calf injury, so Ollie Gordon was somebody I was looking to draft, and Ray Davis because of the James Cook holdout. I feel about guys that have contract situations. So that was two specifically that I was targeting with late round picks because of their situation, not necessarily if the guy gets hurt. It wasn't necessarily. Yeah. I wasn't necessarily. Hey, go get Will Shipley because Saquon Barkley may get hurt.
Yeah, no, I think you were right to put those guys in the column. I think it made a lot of sense at the time. Maybe you were wrong about Ollie Gordon because Jaylen Wright ended up being the handcuff, I guess. I don't know if that was the case in week 1, but midway through the season when there was that one time where Achane got hurt against the Jets. But no, I'm not saying you were wrong on those. I was definitely wrong on Christian Kirk. I can't be like, whatever, it's a late round pick. All right, George Pickens was in your breakout column, and he was the number 6 wide receiver per game. So that was a big win for Jamie.
I mean, it was opportunity, just going to the Cowboys, getting with a quarterback that was going to give him chances to make plays, being the number 2 guy with a lot of less pressure on him. We know the history of Dak Prescott with the Cowboys where they were going to throw a lot. At least that was prior to Schottenheimer, but it's kind of stayed the same. I just think that, this was kind of a layup that if he hit, he was going to hit to a very good level, if not a great level, and he hit to a great level. So Pickens was somebody I was very high on and had him in several leagues.
Man, I think one of my biggest misses was this range of wide receiver and just thinking, man, this is a great range of wide receiver. And it was like rounds 5, 6, 7, basically in a 12-team league. So let's say pick 50 or later. And I'm looking at Fantasy Pros ADP. Xavier Worthy, bust. Devontae Smith, I'd say he was a bust. Tedero McMillan, probably he was wide receiver 25. He's probably finished somewhere around there, I'm guessing. Jamison Williams, interesting year for him. Zay Flowers, Calvin Ridley, George Pickens, Travis Hunter, Rashee Rice, Jalen Waddle, Jerry Jeudy, Rome Odunze. Wasn't nearly as good, Heath, as I thought it was.
Well, I mean, I guess it depends on which segment of the season you're talking about. I think Rashee Rice was wide receiver 4 after he came back.
Yeah.
And Jamison Williams, once Dan Campbell took over play calling, was awesome. And Pickens was the big winner from that group.
Yeah. Big time. I had 0 of George Pickens. Okay. Jaylen Warren, Jamie. Yeah, this is a great call by you. Jaylen Warren ended up being a top 20 running back, 19th per game in half and full PPR, 18th per game in non-PPR.
I mean, obviously a very up and down season for the Steelers running back, starting with the NFL draft, because Caleb Johnson was the guy that we were hoping to see as the featured guy there. And that never materialized once we saw how the preseason was sort of shaking out. And Warren, for me, was always the one that I was the most interested in, simply because I thought, okay, if he gets a chance because of what we've seen when he was sharing previously with Najee Harris, that there was an opportunity for him to be the lead guy. Now, there were times during the season, again, where he wasn't the best running back for Pittsburgh. It was Kenneth Gainwell. So I think just looking at it from the standpoint of Jaylen Warren was great value. He ended up playing very well. For most of the season, he was a solid number 2 running back / flex. There really weren't a lot of games when he was healthy that he killed your fantasy team. And there were some games where he was, one of the better players on your team. So it was a good, it was great value. I think he just ended up performing very well.
All right. So to recap some of Jamie's greatest hits, Trevor Lawrence as a sleeper, Drake Maye as a breakout, Wan'Dale as a sleeper, Pickens and Jaylen Warren were the other 2 that we talked about. Now let's go over to Heath's. And the 5 I chose, or I guess the 6 I chose for Heath were 5 sleepers or breakouts and 1 bust call. The bust call was Kamara, but you were very high in Devon Achane, who ended up going in the 2nd round after his preseason injury. But even before that injury, you were super high on him. He was, believe it or not, only RB5 per game, because 5 running backs this year averaged 20 or more PPR fantasy points. The first time that's happened since 2020. But Achane, you looked at the splits, I think, with Tua and without Tua, and you just said, why are we not totally buying in, right?
Well, and I think Thomas sent this one to me last night, so I figured I'd put it on the list. I was pretty conflicted about whether this was a hit or not, because there were other running backs who were better that were drafted in a similar range, but he did take the leap to 20 fantasy points per game. Like I said, I thought that he would, and he did again stay healthy for the 2nd season in a row. And he continues to led the NFL in yards per rush attempt, showed just how awesome he is. And he's one of the elite running backs and probably a guy who gets drafted as a top 3 or 4 running back next year again.
This was, and I know why you backed off your where you were in him because the calf injury, but you were so high on him.
Yeah.
And
I was probably too high on him.
Well, no, I don't think you were.
Right.
I don't think you were.
No.
and I don't blame you for backing off of it when he got hurt, but like, man, if you had stayed on that course the entire time, like that was awesome. Just how bullish you were early on him, comparatively to the field.
The nice thing about backing off of him was it kept me from drafting Brock Bowers a couple of times. So I took Achane in round, and that's what often happens. Like you back off of a guy because you had him 3rd overall, and now you've got him 2nd in the 2nd round, and still higher than everybody else, just not as high as it was.
And he'll have a new offensive coordinator. The head coach is a defensive guy, Jeff Hafley. Offensive coordinator is Bobby Slowick, who was their passing game coordinator. He's been promoted to their offensive coordinator, and he was the Texans offensive coordinator for a couple of seasons. CJ Stroud's first 2 seasons in the leagues. That's Devon Achane. Jamie, if I was going to ask you, who's the one player that you associated Heath with during the preseason?
Oh, you could be really mean or really nice here.
Yeah, there were 2, I'd say. One great call and one bust that wasn't really Heath's fault.
No, it kind of was. Well, I was not thinking of the one you were. I didn't put him on the loss because he got hurt.
Bowers?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Who's the other one, Jamie?
DeAndre Swift.
Yeah, Swift. So he finished as a top 15 running back per game in all 3 formats, non, half, and full PPR. Congratulations, Heath Cummings. Nice call.
Well, and I think like I kind of had 2 sides of that argument. One was there's nobody else, and that by midseason turned out to be false because they liked Monangai a lot. The other was that DeAndre Swift's going to be much more efficient with Ben Johnson there, and that turned out to be true. He averaged 4.9 yards per carry, the best yards per carry that he'd had since he was with Ben Johnson in 2022. So I think Swift showed that he's still a very good running back, and it turned out working out okay when he was splitting with Monangai because they were just both good some of the time.
Yeah, it's hard to evaluate because this is the weeks 10 through 18. Okay, so basically what happened was week 1, Monangai didn't get a carry, and DeAndre Swift had 17. Mm-hmm. And then after that, there was a split, but not a huge. It was like 2/3 of the carries were going to Swift. Swift missed week 9, and Monangai had 26 carries for 176 yards and 3 catches for 22 yards at the Bengals. Right, amazing matchup. He took advantage of it. Then weeks 10 through 18. DeAndre Swift was on pace for 232 carries, and Monangai was on pace for 191 carries. That's a ton of carries between the 2 of them. They basically split the goal line work. Swift scored 5 touchdowns. 3 of them were from the 6-yard line or closer. Monangai scored 4 touchdowns. 3 of them were from the 4-yard line or closer. So it was a fairly even split with an edge to Swift. Neither of them caught a lot of passes. Swift was on pace for 30 catches, Monangai for 17 in that stretch. So he's a tough player to evaluate. Heath, give me a round for Swift in 2026.
Probably round 4.
Jamie?
I think that's fair. We have to see what happens with the offseason. Do they consider moving on from him? I don't know the contract situation, but, do they want to go Monangai and somebody else? But I think you look at what he did in Ben Johnson and really what Ben Johnson's offense looked like. We were all trying to figure out, who's going to be the number 1 receiver? Who's going to, they were just a really good run team. And, if this offensive line stays intact and they continue to maybe bolster it even more, I think you got to be excited about DeAndre Swift and probably end up being a good value because there's going to be people that are going to be pushing Kyle Monangai as the one you want to draft, year 2, getting more of an opportunity. And then there are going to be people pushing Swift, and maybe Swift can't do this again. He's going to be one of the more fascinating players to dissect. But really, I think if it's status quo, round 4 feels pretty good.
Travis Etienne and Ramondre Stevenson, Heath, were also good calls by you. Travis Etienne was RB 14 per game in PPR, and Stevenson RB 22 per game.
I think one of these, Etienne, I was pretty much had the same opinion from the time Bashal Tutin was drafted until we were drafting fantasy football teams, that the idea that Tutin was just going to take the job from Etienne was probably a little too aggressive. And Etienne was still a very good player, and that turned out to be right. Stevenson, I really wanted no part of all summer until we got to August, and TreVeyon Henderson was a 3rd-round pick, and Ramondre Stevenson was going around pick 100. And so he ended up on the August sleepers list, and turned out that Stevenson was the best running back in New England this year. So, and then especially so in the playoffs. I had a lot more belief in Etienne's offense and talent than I did Stevenson. So Stevenson kind of proved me wrong, but was a very good sleeper pick and a guy that turned into a starting running back for you that was drafted well after most of the starting running backs.
So you were high on Henderson too, but you still said that there's
what happened was I put Henderson on my losers because he was my number 2 running back in the dynasty drafts, and somebody I thought was just easily going to take the job eventually away from Ramondre Stevenson. But what happened is what happens a lot of times with rookies. By the time we got to August, Henderson's ADP was up in round 3, and I don't think I drafted him on one redraft team.
Yeah, how about that? Someone's saying that Travis Etienne is a trap next year. We don't even know where he's going to be next year.
we're gonna have to know a little bit more about his situation before we call him that. But
I think the best call you had with Etienne, or the best point you had with Etienne, it wasn't just Tootin, it was Tank Bigsby. Right. There was a lot of, okay, who's going to be the best running back in Jacksonville? And you stayed the course, with Etienne the entire time. Where I think a lot, and I mean, I know I was kind of like, okay, could be Tootin, could be Bigsby. When they traded Bigsby, it was kind of easy to just say, okay, take the best one at cost.
Right.
The value for Etienne was amazing, the entire time. So that was a great call by you.
There was a point, and I don't remember when it was in the summer, but there was a point where they were all kind of being drafted in the same place, and Etienne was 3rd. Like it was kind of just because I think that was during the period of time where we had the impression that Liam Cohen didn't like Travis Etienne, or they were getting ready to move him or something. So yeah, that ended up being a good value.
You had Alvin Kamara as a bust, and you kept harping on the Kellen Moore not throwing to his running backs. And lo and behold, Kamara actually started the season with 5 or 6 targets in 4 of his first 6 games, I believe. But still, for the year, on pace for only 51 catches, on pace for 53 catches. If you remove week 12, he played 14% of the snaps and left with a season-ending injury. But also he averaged 3.6 yards per carry. I mean, he was terrible. He was RB 37 per game, Alvin Kamara, in full PPR, and 41 in half PPR, 45 per game in non-PPR. Just one of the biggest busts, really, I think.
Yeah, and I think if you look at no matter how it happened, and he had 2 catches in that final game that he left, so that didn't affect his catches per game too much. It's again about 60% of what his career average had been in catches per game is what Kamara gave us. He was 3 catches per game, the lowest mark of his career. And I think the other concern that I had, and this offense ended up in the second half being better than I thought it was going to be, but I was worried that in an offense this bad, when he'd been inefficient in the past, he'd made up for it with touchdowns. He ended up scoring 1 touchdown. I wouldn't have guessed that low of a number. Yeah. But he was a bust.
He was. If he had scored like a normal amount of touchdowns, maybe he could have been top 30 running back, 25, something like that in full PPR, but not good enough. And then you guys both had Tucker Kraft on a sleeper or breakout list.
A breakout for me.
I think Kraft, like one of the reasons I wanted to put him on somebody's list is just to highlight that there were so many injuries of guys that were on my sleeper, breakout, or bust list this year, good and bad for my call, but it's just kind of the season that it was. And Tucker Kraft was a great call as long as he stayed healthy. And then in terms of win rate for fantasy football teams, probably didn't turn into a very good call at all.
Yeah, but he was tight end 2 per game, so I think you guys deserve credit for that. And tore his ACL in week 9. Hopefully a full recovery for him. But I come back to it and just do the math real quick. 44 divided by 8 times 17. He's on pace for 94 targets. So that's a little scary to me. I mean, no one gets a lot of targets in this Green Bay offense, right? And he's coming off a torn ACL.
I think we could have some really fun debates this summer about who is going to be the best tight end in that division. Between Loveland and Laporta now with Petzing and Kraft coming off the injury, like one of those guys could be one of the top 3 tight ends.
Yeah, you're right. It's a good division just in general. Okay, let's take a break and we'll come back and look at the biggest misses from Jamie and Heath after this.
And I won't look back. I won't give up. Look
So Heath, you have Jayden Daniels on your biggest misses list. He was your QB1 at the end of the day.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Do you think he was a miss because of injury, or are you including his?
No. If I would just been because of injury, I wouldn't have said it. He took a little bit of a step back in terms of his production, even when he was healthy. He averaged 6.7 yards per pass attempt. That's a big drop off from his rookie number. He had a 4.3% touchdown rate. That's a big drop off from his rookie pass touchdowns. And I think some of it was part of the time he was healthy. Terry McLaurin wasn't Terry McLaurin. And I can't, that's what, when I hesitated, I wasn't sure if we got far enough into the McLaurin holdout that I had dropped him down to 2 or 3. But regardless, even if you had him at QB 2 or 3, he was a miss this year.
You have Ashton Jeanty on this list as well. And Jeanty was about RB 15 or so. What's amazing is that Jeanty played 17 games and he only had 266 carries. This team, the Raiders, they were last in the NFL in scoring, and only one team averaged fewer running back carries per game than the Raiders. Can you name that team?
Fewer running back carries per game than the Raiders. I'm trying to think of somebody else that was super low on total play volume, because I think they were dead last in that regard.
I don't think it's going to be this one. They led the NFL in pass attempts.
Okay, so it wasn't the Chiefs?
No.
Okay, who was it?
Cardinals, fewest running back carries per game.
Well, they had 7 running backs get hurt, so that kind of makes sense. No, and I'm not ready to admit yet that I was wrong about Ashton Jeanty's talent. I just underestimated how bad the offensive line could be, and I overestimated what Chip Kelly could do. Ian Hart's put out a really good chart today that showed tackles avoided per carry, yards after contact per rush, and Jeanty still stands out in terms of avoiding tackles. The problem for him most of the year was that he would make 1 or 2 guys miss, and there were 1 or 2 guys there waiting for him. Like, the blocking was just so atrociously bad that it wasn't good enough to break a tackle or 2 on a run. You had to break 4.
Who are you guys more confident in bouncing back in 2026? Jayden Daniels or Ashton Jeanty?
As of right now, I'd say
Confident?
Yeah.
Jeanty.
I would say Jeanty.
Let's see where Jeanty went in this draft. He went with the 3rd pick of round 2 in our half PPR January draft. And, one of my biggest misses was Nico Collins. I just don't really understand what happened to Nico Collins. I think it was just CJ Stroud wasn't good, but there was obviously a lot of risk there. We knew they were going to have a bad offensive line. We knew Stroud was coming off kind of a bad year. So I'm just wondering, are we making that mistake with anybody in the first round? This draft, yeah, I don't think so. Looking at the draft that we just did, Bijan might be on the worst offense of anyone in the first round, believe it or not. Puka, Gibbs, Chase, Caffrey, JSN, Devon Achane, Lamb, Jonathan Taylor, St. Brown, James Cook, Malik Neighbors, who shouldn't be a first round pick. Jamie, are we falling? Because I think about Jeanty and I think about Nico, and these guys were first round busts, and their offenses just weren't good enough. Their quarterbacks weren't good enough. Are we making a mistake here with Bijan as number 1, with Jonathan Taylor, with JSN losing his offensive coordinator and having Sam Darnold? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you could probably nitpick all these guys clearly. McCaffrey with all the work and the history of what that means. CeeDee Lamb's coming off a terrible season, with what happens if George Pickens stays again. Does St. Brown continue to produce this level in a maybe more tight end friendly offense that could take some targets away from him if Jameson is still going to be that type of guy as well? So, I mean, you go down the list. I don't know. I mean, this isn't going to be what the first round looks like. So, we're probably looking at, I'll say confidently, 8 guys that will be there. And there's probably 4 guys that will, Trey McBride may push himself into the first round. If we're just talking ADP. There'll probably be another running back or 2. Again, it wouldn't shock me if Ken Walker has a big Super Bowl and then stays in Seattle or goes someplace else. Breece Hall goes to someplace that's, our dream situation. We're going to be excited about that type of deal. So I think just with the 12 names that you mentioned, yeah, Neighbors could be a little troubling. I don't know. Lamb is one that makes me a little nervous just if Pickens is there again. So I don't know. We'll see.
Okay.
In terms of offenses, though, like just to your question, Nico was still very good. He just wasn't like you were expecting top 5 good.
Yeah, I was expecting a lot better. What did he average? Nico averaged 15.1 points per game. I thought that'd be more like 20.
Well, and that's just also like I think you have to put it in the context of the position in 2025. It was an awful year for wide receivers, and that may be like a sign of things to come with the new kickoff rule. There aren't as many offensive plays on drives, which means there aren't as many receptions, which means wide receivers aren't going to score as many PPR points.
Maybe. Here are the top 6. I'll just read the offenses for the top 10 wide receivers per game. Rams, Seahawks. We never thought Seattle would be this good of an offense. So this is kind of one of the issues with the exercise is it's not that easy to predict the best and worst offenses. But Rams, Seahawks, Bengals, Lions, Chiefs, that's Rashee Rice, Cowboys, Pickens, Saints, Chris Olave, Falcons, Rams, Cowboys again. So you have 2 in the top 10. You have 2 representatives from the Rams, 2 from the Cowboys. You got Seattle, Cincinnati, Detroit, Kansas City, New Orleans, Atlanta. All right, take with that what you will. Let me get Heath. You've got TreVeyon Henderson in here. I don't think we need to talk about him, but Jerry Jeudy. Oh man, ugh. What an interesting player.
I was thinking about this when I sent the list in, and it was an enormous miss by me. And Jeudy was just I've talked too much about how bad he was, but like the implications of his drops early in the season changed the landscape for multiple guys on multiple teams. Because I think if he just catches the balls that 75% of wide receivers catch in the first 4 games of the season, the Browns are 500 and probably not benching Flacco. And the Bengals probably aren't getting Flacco. And that like everything just looks different. But the biggest thing was like he had the target volume I expected early in the season. And many of the targets were right where a normal wide receiver would want them. And he just dropped them all.
Jamie, does Jerry Jeudy deserve to be drafted? He was the first pick of round 13 in our January mock.
Yeah. I mean, if this receiving core still looks the way that it does, I think he's worth a late round pick just to see, what this new offense looks like with Todd Monken, who the quarterback is going to be, what the rest of the receiving core, appears to be. It's just funny that, the number 1 receiver technically with 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks, Browns have 2 Pro Bowl quarterbacks, couldn't end up, doing anything. So
was the Pro Bowl yesterday? When
I was at a baseball field from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. yesterday
apparently it's tomorrow
in the South Florida tundra.
Yeah. Oh man, the Pro Bowl. Sure. Yes, Joe Flacco is now going to be participating in the Pro Bowl. His first Pro Bowl nod.
No kidding.
Pretty sure, yeah, Joe Flacco.
It's really amazing, and I won't talk about another sport for very long, but we have like serious arguments going on about whether LeBron should be an all-star this year in the NBA.
How is the most Clipper thing ever is the Clippers are hosting the All-Star game without an All-Star, and Kawhi Leonard's having a good season.
I didn't know that. I don't know. Do you think LeBron should be an all-star? I feel like there's my hot take on LeBron, who I rarely watch. He needs to stop shooting so many 3-pointers. He's just not good enough at it. And he does it like early in the shot clock. He's been doing this, I think, for a few years now. He's just not a good enough 3-pointer. Just stop doing that.
So my take on it, and I think he's had some very good 3-point percentage shooting years recently, but my take on it is no, he doesn't deserve to be an all-star based on his 2025, 2026 stats. But we've been doing this for a long time in all sports. Guys like him get to play in the all-star game. Michael Jordan was an all-star both of his years with the Wizards, a starter.
That's different though. They were being voted in.
I don't think like, first of all, you were right, Heath. The last 2 years, LeBron was great from three. This year, 33% this year, though. I don't believe in like the lifetime achievement award. I think the people who deserve to be in the All-Star games are the ones who play the best, and they should get in. Like, it's not fair to maybe the guy that should be in for the first time.
Kawhi's having a better year, for example.
Yeah, like, it's not fair to people. He's been in an All-Star before, but just if you deserve it, then you get it. You don't get it just because you've been around forever. I don't care about that.
Well, I think you can deserve it without having great numbers this year as well, I'm saying. I mean, it's a celebration of the sport.
LeBron's having a good season.
Right.
He's 22-6-6. Like, that's a good season, especially for a 41-year-old.
So who would be the comparisons? I was going to say, we're going to put Aaron Rodgers in the Pro Bowl, but he hasn't had as good of a year as LeBron.
Well, you can't compare the Pro Bowl because it's
you can't.
complete.
The Shooter Sanders and Joe Flacco just made Pro Bowl.
I know, but if in a world where like people cared about the Pro Bowl,
Kelsey might be the.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Right, he doesn't really deserve to be in. But yeah, whatever. You know what? Look, I believe in meritocracy. Sorry, I'll tell. And Brock Bowers was the last guy on your list. He ended up being the number 4 tight end per game. He averaged 14.2 PPR fantasy points per game, but actually scored more than 15.3 in only 2 of 12 games. He had that massive game. What was that against Denver?
Jaguars,
yeah. And whatever it was, but
first game back from his 3-game absence.
Right. And Bowers on your bust list. Well, no, on your misses list.
Yeah, and I put a question mark next to this one because from my perspective, this is entirely injury related. But again, it's like Genty. The Raiders were so bad that he had several bad games. If you look at the games that he played in, that he wasn't trying to play through the PCL, and maybe he was all year because they ended up shutting him down. I think that was just tanking. But it worked. And I don't have any problem with teams doing it. But if you look at the games that he played where he said he was healthy, he averaged over 16 fantasy points per game on the worst offense in the NFL. So that's pretty good. I don't know what 16 fantasy points per game is worth in terms of a draft pick this year. Definitely should have had McBride ahead of him. But if Brock Bowers is healthy last year and Kyler Murray starts 17 games, I kind of think Brock Bowers probably would have outscored Trey McBride.
Agreed.
I really want to see how this would have played out because Bowers had 5 catches for 103 yards on 8 targets in 3 quarters against the Patriots in week 1 and just played hurt after that and struggled. I would have loved to see how this played out. You just never know. Certainly could have had a great year. All right, Jamie, your misses list. Your biggest misses. Justin Fields is so interesting because he actually scored more than 29 points in 3 games. 2 more games with more than 21 points. He actually was pretty good. But he had some terrible games. He had a terrible game against Denver. He had a terrible game against Carolina where he got hurt. He had a terrible game against Cleveland. He also had a terrible game against Buffalo where he got benched against Carolina, hurt against Buffalo. But you did have him as a miss. Fields.
It was a breakout quarterback. 2 breakout quarterbacks I had in the final column were Drake Maye and Justin Fields. So the difference in those 2 guys was glaring, obviously. I think just in the case of Fields, it was he had to play the full season to fulfill that designation, and he clearly could not be the guy for the Jets. However, it shook out. Whether they just didn't want him to be the guy, he wasn't good enough to be the guy, whatever. Didn't help fantasy managers. So that's the bottom line. So when he was the starter, he had some very good moments, and then unfortunately just couldn't sustain that for the entirety of the year.
Okay, we've got RJ Harvey on here. Tough one because I was obsessed with drafting him too. So RJ Harvey, one of your biggest misses. Yeah,
and I gave you Henderson too. Heath kind of said it. I was very high on both those guys. The same thing he said. I thought he was going to be the guy for the Patriots. Same thing with Harvey for the Broncos. And it didn't happen until week 12, actually. J.K. Dobbins got hurt in week 10 with the foot injury. Week 10, week 11 weren't great for Harvey. I think they had their bye in week 13, if I'm not mistaken. And then they come back from their bye, and he was great in the final stretch for fantasy managers in the playoffs. But clearly, he didn't help a lot of people in the first 11 weeks of the season, outside of a couple of games where he scored touchdowns. So I'm very curious to see what happens this offseason for the Broncos. J.K. Dobbins said in the exit interviews with the media, he hopes to be a Bronco for life. He's a free agent. We'll see if they bring him back. But I'd be shocked if there's not somebody there to share with Harvey, more so than a Jaleel McLaughlin type of player. I think they're going to go and either draft another guy, sign somebody. I think that's just what Sean Payton wants, is a two-headed backfield with Harvey, not necessarily as the lead guy, because he just didn't run the ball very well. And firing, I forget the offense coordinator, it doesn't really matter, not the play caller, but the one thing that he said was he felt like their run game wasn't great. Payton said.
Yeah. Okay, and you've got this is a guy that we pretty much never talk about, is Xavier Worthy. What a disappointing year. He got hurt in week 1 almost immediately, missed 2 games, and he just wasn't good. I mean, he scored 1 touchdown all year, 532 yards in 14 games for Xavier Worthy. And another guy that I shared your enthusiasm for. It didn't work out.
So, I mean, to be honest, it felt like low-hanging fruit, because Rashee Rice was going to be suspended, and then we didn't know with the knee injury when he would return. But you thought, okay, 6 weeks of the guy that we saw at the end of his rookie campaign being the go-to guy for Patrick Mahomes, man, that was so disappointing, And then Rice comes back, and obviously Worthy was terrible down the stretch for the majority of the season. So it was just frustrating. It was really disappointing. And now I think Heath brought this up, like, we may be in a situation next year where if they do add somebody else, and I think the name most likely is Tyreek Hill, just in terms of reunion, but I'm talking like big name guy, So if they add somebody else and Kelsey returns, like, you can't trust Worthy at all.
Do you think Eric Bieniemy is going to make a difference for this team?
Yes.
I think the fact that he came out and said in his meeting with the media that he talked to Patrick and Travis and how excited they were about having him back might be a sign.
Okay. Hopefully. Yeah, there's some talent here with Xavier Worthy, but it just did not work out this year. And Michael Pittman, you had on your bust list, right?
I did.
Okay. And you consider this a miss?
Yeah. I mean, he was one of the best values of any player, certainly one of the better values of any wide receivers. I just didn't trust Daniel Jones, and I had Josh Downs as a sleeper, I believe. So I was expecting Downs to take a step forward. Tyler Warren, the addition of him, being a significant factor, and just not trusting Michael Pittman to ever get back to being the player that we saw 2 seasons ago when he was good with Gardner Minshew. So that was just a complete miss on my part.
And Pittman ends up as outside the top 30 at wide receiver. But in his last
split in 2 halves.
I mean, I know what you're saying. Not exactly halves, because there are only 4 games after Daniel Jones got hurt, and he scored, I think, less than 20 fantasy points combined in those 4 games. He did have a good game at Jacksonville in Week 14. Daniel Jones got hurt in that game, but yeah, he was probably a top 20 guy.
He was wide receiver 17 through Week 14.
There you go.
It's a terrible call by me.
I was right there.
He had an interesting season, though. I mean, it was a lot of touchdowns. It wasn't really. All right, do you have his pace by any chance? His numbers through Week 14?
69 catches, 699 yards, 7 touchdowns.
Yeah, it's not like he was tearing the world apart, setting the world on fire. He's on pace for 90 catches, 914 yards, and 9 touchdowns on 123 targets. That's a weird year.
It was the whole thing. I thought about the Colts was, I mean, everything was weird.
Yeah.
It was weird that Daniel Jones was awesome. Tyler Warren's season was weird. Like, the only thing that was not weird was Alec Pierce's season was extremely weird.
Yeah.
And Jonathan Taylor's just awesome, obviously.
Yeah. Last one was Matthew Golden. And Matthew Golden calls into question, Jamie, can we ever trust the Packers wide receiver?
I'm going to be somewhat bullish on Christian Watson, just because I think that he showed in the first year back from an ACL tear, like, he can still make a lot of great plays.
Yeah.
And was very good with Jordan Love. The concern would be is with Tucker Kraft back, so we didn't really see those 2 guys playing very much together. Maybe not at all. Watson, I think, returned after Kraft was injured. So in the case of Golden, like, that was just so disappointing because he had a good training camp. And I thought, just based on no Watson there, who knew what we're going to get from Jayden Reed? Romeo Doubs, I've always felt like is just a guy, and he had some better moments again than, I expect him to. So I'm curious to see what this receiving core looks like, what the timetable is for Kraft to return. And Golden, I think, still has a lot of upside. I mean, again, draft him in the first round, hoping for more, but just not getting it. So trust, I think as a starter, probably not. Trust as a starter in 3 receiver leagues, I think so. So for me, it'll be Watson.
Okay, Matthew Golden.
It is kind of funny that with Christian Watson's injury history, he is the guy. And I agree. Like when I've started on my too early 2026 projections, and he's my favorite Packers wide receiver, but I don't really have any hope that he's going to play 17 games.
You talking Watson?
Yeah.
Yeah. Watson definitely did. I'd love to know the last time. Sorry, thinking out loud here, but I want to see what his target per out run rate was, because you just don't see that a lot with Packers guys. It's target per out run rate for Christian Watson was 22.8%, which is pretty good. It was actually 24.4% as a rookie, but 22.8% this year, and probably even higher as it got later in the year. And can he repeat that? Because he's a really good player, but you just don't see that a lot with Packers receivers. And yeah, I think the Tucker Kraft point is very valid. Good job, guys. A lot of hits, more hits than misses. Well done in 2025. Now you have to do it again in 2026. I think you should just rename all of your columns sleepers. That way you can never be wrong.
No, we have no problem admitting that we're wrong. Unlike you as a commissioner, you never admit you're wrong.
I think last time I sent a note to the Big Burger League, I think I said I was the worst commissioner ever, which I agree with, which I stand by. So I admit I'm pretty much always wrong there. Not with Jamie, though. Usually Jamie's wrong. Not the last time, but usually it's Jamie's fault. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching and listening. We'll be back on Wednesday. I think we're going to talk some draft prospects. We're going to take a look at the draft class for the first time on Wednesday. Then Thursday, we'll have our Super Bowl preview. Thursday's podcast will be at 9 a.m. Wednesdays will be at 10 a.m. Eastern time. See you later. Have a good one.